The moment Lena Carter locked eyes with the blood-stained stranger in the ER, she knew her invisible life was about to shatter. Adrian Moretti, Chicago's most dangerous crime boss, didn't just see her. He claimed her. What starts as one exhausted nurse catching a killer's attention becomes an all-consuming collision of two broken souls. One who's never mattered to anyone, and one who will burn his empire to the ground to keep her. In a world where mercy is weakness and love is a death sentence, their connection might destroy them both. If you're hooked, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. Quote. The fluorescent lights of Chicago Memorial's emergency room hummed with the kind of relentless buzz that burrowed into your skull and never left. Lena Carter had stopped noticing it somewhere around hour 14 of her shift, or maybe it was hour 15. Time had become irrelevant, measured only in the endless parade of trauma, the sharp bite of antiseptic, and the weight of exhaustion that made her bones feel like they were turning to sand. She moved through the chaos on autopilot, her scrubs wrinkled and stained, dark hair falling out of its bun in wisps that stuck to her forehead. 23 years old, and she felt ancient, hollowed out, a ghost in blue scrubs who existed only to patch people up and send them back into the world that had forgotten she existed. Carter, trauma incoming, 2 minutes. Dr. Reeves didn't even look at her as he barked the order, already moving toward the ambulance bay. Lena followed, her legs protesting every step. She'd worked a double because Sarah called in sick, again, and because she needed the overtime to make rent. Always the same calculation, work until you drop or lose the apartment that wasn't even worth keeping. The ambulance doors burst open and EMTs rushed in, wheeling a gurney between them. Gunshot wound to the shoulder, vitals stable, but he's lost blood. Lena's training kicked in before her exhausted brain could catch up. She was moving, hands steady even as the rest of her wanted to collapse. The man on the gurney was maybe 40, olive-skinned, expensive suit, torn and soaked with blood. He was conscious, jaw tight with pain, dark eyes scanning the room with the kind of alertness that didn't match someone who'd just been shot. But it wasn't him that made Lena's breath catch. It was the man who walked in behind the gurney, 6 feet of contained violence in a black suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. He moved like a predator, his presence sucking the air out of the room. Dark hair swept back, sharp jaw and eyes the color of storm clouds, cold and assessing as they cataloged every exit, every person, every potential threat. When those eyes landed on Lena, the world narrowed to a pinpoint. She'd been invisible her entire life. The foster kid no one wanted, the student teachers forgot, the nurse doctors talked over. But this man, this dangerous man, saw her, really saw her, and the weight of his attention was like standing in front of an oncoming train, unable to move, unable to breathe. Let's get him into trauma too, Dr. Reeves was saying, already ushering the patient toward the surgical suite. The man in the black suit didn't follow. He stood in the center of the ER like he owned it, still watching Lena with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Sir, you can't—" One of the security guards started. The man turned his head slightly, barely a movement, but the guard stopped mid-sentence and took a step back. No words. Just that look. Lena should have moved, should have followed Dr. Reeves. Should have done literally anything except stand there like an idiot, caught in the magnetic pull of someone who was clearly, obviously, dangerous. "You look like you're about to collapse." His voice was low, rough around the edges, with an accent that spoke of Chicago streets and old money twisted together. "I'm fine." The words came out automatic, a reflex. She'd been saying them her whole life. One dark eyebrow lifted. "You're a terrible liar. And you're bleeding." She gestured to his hand, his right hand, where blood had soaked through an already dark sleeve and dripped onto the pristine hospital floor. He glanced down like he'd forgotten about it. "It's nothing. Nothing doesn't leave blood trails across my ER." The words came out sharper than she intended, exhaustion fraying her filter. She grabbed a pair of gloves from the nearest cart. "Sit. I don't take orders, Piccola." "Then stand there and bleed. I don't care." Dinktum. She was already walking toward an empty exam room, betting on instinct that he'd follow. "But if you pass out and crack your head open, I'm not filling out the paperwork." She heard his low laugh, dark and surprised, before his footsteps followed her. The exam room was quieter, separated from the chaos of the main ER by thin walls and a curtain that didn't quite close all the way. Lena snapped on the gloves and gestured to the exam table. "Jacket off." He studied her for a long moment, and she wondered if she'd miscalculated. If this was the moment her exhaustion-fueled audacity was going to get her killed. But then he shrugged out of his jacket with a wince that he tried to hide, revealing a white dress shirt soaked red along one side. "Shirt too," Lena said, grabbing scissors. "At least buy me dinner first." Despite everything, the blood, the danger radiating off him like heat, her bone-deep exhaustion, Lena felt her lips twitch. That line probably works better when you're not bleeding all over yourself. It never works. He unbuttoned the shirt with his left hand, movements careful. "I've been told I'm not very charming. Can't imagine why." She helped him ease the shirt off, and her breath caught when she saw the wound. A deep gash across his ribs, still bleeding sluggishly. Not a gunshot. Something sharp. A knife, maybe. "This needs stitches. Can you do it?" "I'm a nurse, not a surgeon. That's not what I asked." Their eyes met, and Lena felt something shift in her chest. A question beneath the question. Can you do this without asking questions? Can you see this and not call the police? Can I trust you? She should say no. Should page Dr. Reeves. Should follow protocol and procedure and all the rules that kept the world ordered and safe. "Lie back," she heard herself say. He did, stretching out on the narrow exam table, and Lena gathered supplies with hands that trembled slightly. Not from fear, though she should be afraid. From something else. Something that felt dangerously like recognition. "What's your name?" he asked as she cleaned the wound, his jaw tight but his breathing steady. "Lena." She didn't know why she told him, didn't know why she added Lena Carter. "Adrian Moretti." He said it like a confession, like he was giving her information she could use against him. Lena's hands paused for just a second before continuing. "Moretti." She didn't follow Chicago crime families, barely had time to sleep, let alone watch the news, but even she knew that name, knew what it meant. "Your friend going to be okay?" She threaded the needle, grateful for something to focus on besides the way her heart was racing. "Marco, he'll be fine. Shoulder wounds are more dramatic than dangerous." Adrian's eyes tracked her movements, missing nothing. "You've done this before." It wasn't a question, but Lena answered anyway. "Cook County ER before this. Worked in Englewood for a year." She began stitching, her hands steady despite the adrenaline singing through her veins. "You see a lot of knife wounds there, gunshots too." "Why'd you leave?" "Same reason anyone leaves. Couldn't afford to stay." The words tasted bitter. She'd loved that job, loved feeling useful, needed. But when they cut nursing positions and her rent went up, the math stopped working. This place pays better, barely, but better. She could feel him watching her, that intense focus that made her feel like he was cataloging every detail, every tell. "You're good at this." "Thanks." She tied off another suture, working with quick efficiency. "You're good at holding still. Most guys would be flinching. I've had worse. I don't doubt it." She glanced at him, at the scars she could see marking his torso. Old wounds, badly healed, a life written in violence. "You should really see an actual doctor." "I'm seeing you." "I'm not." Lena stopped, frustrated. "I mean someone who can prescribe antibiotics. Make sure this doesn't get infected." "I'll be fine." He sat up as she finished the last stitch, his movement fluid, despite the fresh wound. "Thank you, Lena Carter." The way he said her name made her shiver, like he was memorizing it, claiming it. "You should rest," she said, stripping off her gloves. "At least for a few hours. And keep it clean." "Carter, where the hell have you been?" Dr. Reeves burst through the curtain, his face red with irritation. "We've got 3 more traumas incoming, and I need—" He stopped dead when he saw Adrian, his eyes going wide with recognition and what might have been fear. "Mr. Moretti." Reeves' voice had gone careful, deferential. "I didn't realize you were— Is everything— I'm fine." Adrian stood, reaching for his ruined shirt. "Miss Carter was very helpful." "Yes, of course. I'm glad we could—" Reeves was practically tripping over himself, and Lena watched in fascination as her normally arrogant attending transformed into something obsequious. "If there's anything else we can do—" "There is." Adrian's eyes found Lena again, and she felt pinned by that gaze. When does she get off shift? The world tilted. Lena gripped the exam table, trying to steady herself as black spots danced at the edge of her vision. She'd been running on empty for hours, and now that the adrenaline of stitching up a crime boss was fading, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Lena? Adrian's voice seemed to come from very far away. She tried to answer, tried to say she was fine, that reflexive lie, but her knees buckled. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. Adrian had moved faster than should have been possible for someone who'd just been stitched up, and now he was holding her against his chest, one hand cradling the back of her head. "When's the last time you ate?" His voice was rough, almost angry. "I don't—" Lena couldn't think straight, couldn't focus on anything except the warmth of his body and the steady beat of his heart against her ear. "Breakfast. Maybe. Yesterday? Cristo." He lifted her easily, like she weighed nothing, settling her on the exam table she'd just vacated. "Reeves, get her some juice, now." "I'm fine," Lena started. "Stop saying that!" Adrian's hands were gentle but firm as he tilted her chin up, checking her pupils. "You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground." Dr. Reeves returned with orange juice, his hands shaking slightly as he passed it to Adrian. "She's been here since 7 yesterday morning. Double shift because we're short-staffed. So get more staff." Adrian held the juice to Lena's lips, waiting until she took a sip before continuing. "Don't run your nurses to death because you're too cheap to hire properly. It's not about, we have budget constraints. Then get a bigger budget." Each word was clipped, controlled fury. "She just worked 19 hours straight. When were you planning to send her home, when she collapsed on a patient?" Reeves paled. "Mr. Moretti, I assure you, I don't want your assurances. I want her shift to end, now. I can't just hospital policy." Adrian turned his head, that same slight movement that had made the security guard back off, and Reeves went silent. The attending doctor swallowed hard, then nodded. I'll find coverage. She can leave within the hour." "She'll leave now." Adrian's attention returned to Lena, his expression softening into something that looked almost like concern. "Drink more." Lena obeyed, too tired to argue, too confused by what was happening to process it. The juice helped, sugar hitting her bloodstream and clearing some of the fog from her brain. "I need to finish my shift." "You need to eat, sleep, not collapse in the middle of an ER." Adrian's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, a gentle touch that felt shockingly intimate. "When's the last time someone took care of you, Piccola?" "Never." The answer rose up from somewhere deep and true, but Lena pushed it down. "I take care of myself?" "Clearly." There was dark humor in his voice, but also something else, something that made her chest ache. "Come with me." I can't just..." But even as she protested, Lena knew she was going to say yes. Knew it with the same certainty she'd known when their eyes first met that this man was going to change everything. "You can." Adrian helped her stand, keeping one hand at the small of her back in case she swayed again. "Unless you want to go back to killing yourself in this fluorescent hell? It's my job. It's exploitation." He guided her toward the exit, and somehow no one stopped them. Not Reeves, not security, not any of the other nurses who watched with wide eyes as Chicago's most dangerous crime boss walked out with the girl they'd never noticed before. "And it ends tonight." The night air hit Lena like a slap, cold and crisp after the stale heat of the hospital. A black town car waited at the curb, engine running, and a man in a suit opened the back door as they approached. "This is insane," Lena said, but she didn't pull away when Adrian helped her into the car. "I don't even know you. You know enough." He slid in beside her, and the car pulled smoothly into traffic. "You know I'm dangerous. You know I could hurt you. Are you going to?" "No." The word was absolute. A promise. "Never." Lena should have been terrified, should have jumped out of the car at the first red light and run back to her tiny apartment and her exhausting job and the life that was slowly killing her. But she was so tired of running, so tired of surviving. And for the first time in her 23 years, someone was looking at her like she mattered. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "Somewhere safe." Adrian's hand found hers in the darkness of the car, his fingers lacing through hers with surprising gentleness. Somewhere you can rest. The city blurred past the windows, her city, the place she'd grown up invisible and alone. Lena watched the light streak by and felt something in her chest crack open, not breaking, blooming. "I don't understand why you're doing this," she whispered. Adrian turned to look at her, and in the shifting shadows of the car, his expression was raw, honest. "Because the moment I saw you in that ER, looking at me like I was a person instead of a monster, I knew I was never going to be able to walk away." The words hung between them, too much too soon, but Lena couldn't bring herself to dismiss them, because she felt it too, that recognition, that pull. Like something in her had been waiting her whole life for him to walk through those doors. "I'm not," she started but didn't know how to finish. "I'm not special. I'm not worth this. I'm not someone who gets saved." "You are." Adrian said it with absolute conviction, like he could read her thoughts. "Don't argue with me about your own worth, Lena. You'll lose." Despite everything, she smiled. Confident. Honest. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "I know what it looks like to be invisible, to survive instead of live, and I know what it looks like when someone is about to break. And you think you can fix me?" There was an edge to her voice, old hurt rising up. "No." His answer surprised her. "I think you can fix yourself, but you shouldn't have to do it alone." The car pulled up to a building Lena didn't recognize. Sleek, modern, expensive. The kind of place she'd never even imagined living in. Adrian helped her out, his hand steady at her back as they crossed the lobby and stepped into an elevator that opened directly into a penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, Lake Michigan a black expanse beyond. The space was masculine, minimalist, and felt more like a well-designed cage than a home. But it was clean and quiet, and Lena felt her exhausted body sag with relief at being away from the hospital's chaos. "Bedrooms through there," Adrian gestured to a hallway. "Bathrooms stocked. Take whatever you need. I should go home." But even as she said it, Lena was swaying on her feet, too tired to think straight. "Where's home?" "Pilsen. A studio apartment with broken heat and neighbors who scream at each other at 3 a.m. She laughed, but it came out bitter. "It's not much. Stay here tonight." Not a command, an offer. "Sleep, eat, let yourself rest." "Why?" The question burst out of her, sharp with desperation. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me. I'm no one." "Don't." The word cracked like a whip. Adrian crossed the space between them in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame her face with surprising gentleness. "Don't ever call yourself no one. Not in front of me." Lena's breath caught. Up close, she could see the silver scar through his left eyebrow, the slight crook in his nose from an old break, the way his eyes weren't quite cold. They were careful, guarded. The eyes of someone who'd learned to protect himself by showing nothing. "I'm a crime boss, Lena. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the details." His voice was rough, honest in a way that felt like he was cutting himself open. "But when I look at you, I see someone who's been fighting their whole life just to exist. And I can't." He stopped, jaw tight. "I won't let you keep fighting alone." Tears burned at the back of Lena's eyes, but she blinked them away. She'd learned young that crying didn't help, didn't change anything. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing." His thumbs brushed away the tears that escaped anyway. "I want to give, not take. Let me." It was the sincerity that broke her, the raw honesty in his voice, the way he looked at her like she was something precious instead of disposable. Lena had spent her whole life being overlooked, used up, forgotten. And now this dangerous man, this criminal, was holding her like she mattered. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Adrian smiled, and it transformed his face from harsh to almost beautiful. "Go shower. I'll order food." The bathroom was all marble and chrome, a far cry from the mold-spotted shower in her apartment. Lena stood underwater hot enough to scald, scrubbing away 19 hours of hospital grime and letting herself cry where no one could hear. Great gulping sobs that she'd been holding back for months, maybe years. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that was softer than anything she'd ever owned, she found clothes laid out on the bed. A t-shirt, clearly Adrian's from the size, and a pair of sweatpants with a drawstring. They were huge on her, but they were clean and comfortable, and Lena pulled them on with shaking hands. The smell of food drew her to the kitchen, where Adrian was plating pasta with a practiced ease that surprised her. He'd changed too, his suit replaced by dark jeans and a black Henley that showed off his lean strength. "You cook?" She slid onto one of the bar stools, unable to hide her surprise. "Marco taught me. Said if I was going to stay in his house, I needed to be useful." Adrian set a plate in front of her, rigatoni and a rich tomato sauce, the smell making her stomach clench with hunger. "Eat." Lena didn't need to be told twice. The first bite was heaven, and she made an involuntary sound of pleasure that made Adrian's lips quirk. "Good." "Amazing." She took another bite, then another, suddenly ravenous. "When did you stay with Marco?" "When I was 16, after my father died and his associates decided I was too young to inherit." Adrian leaned against the counter, watching her eat with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "Marco took me in, kept me alive long enough to take back what was mine. The man who was shot tonight." It wasn't a question. "Yeah." Something dark crossed Adrian's expression. "He's more than an associate. He's family. The only family I've got left." Lena heard the weight beneath those words, the implication of loss and violence and a life lived on the edge of death. "Is he really going to be okay?" "Better than okay. Marco's too stubborn to die, and he's got the best surgeon in Chicago working on him right now." Adrian poured 2 glasses of wine, setting one in front of Lena, courtesy of a very generous donation to the hospital's cardiac wing. "You bribed them." "I incentivized them." He raised his glass in a mock toast. "There's a difference." "Not really." But Lena found herself smiling as she clinked her glass against his. The wine was rich and smooth, probably expensive, and it warmed her from the inside out. They ate in comfortable silence, and Lena marveled at how easy this felt. How right. She should be afraid. She was afraid, in a distant, rational part of her brain. But the larger part, the part that was tired of being alone, was just grateful. "Tell me about yourself," Adrian said when she'd finished eating. "The parts that don't involve working yourself to death." Lena laughed, but it was hollow. "There's not much to tell. Foster kid, aged out of the system at 18. Put myself through nursing school working 3 jobs. And now I'm here, barely making rent and wondering why I bothered." "You bothered because you're a healer." Adrian's eyes were serious. "Because you look at broken things and want to fix them. Fat lot of good it does." The words came out bitter. "For every person I save, 10 more come through those doors. And I can't fix the system. Can't change anything that matters. So you kill yourself trying anyway." "What else am I supposed to do?" Lena's voice cracked. "Just give up? Stop caring?" "No." Adrian reached across the counter, his hand covering hers. "You're supposed to let someone help carry the weight." "Why would you want to?" The question was raw, vulnerable. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." "I know enough." His grip tightened, grounding her. "I know you worked a 19-hour shift and still took time to stitch me up properly. I know you didn't flinch when you realized who I was. I know you look at the world like it's broken, but still worth saving." He paused, his expression intense. "And I know that when I look at you, I see something I didn't think existed anymore." "What's that?" "Someone worth protecting." The words hung in the air between them, too heavy and too honest. Lena felt something shift in her chest, some wall she'd built to survive, finally cracking under the weight of his sincerity. "I don't need protecting," she said, but it came out weak. "Everyone needs protecting, Piccola, even the strong ones, especially them." Adrian stood, moving around the counter to stand in front of her. "You've been fighting alone your whole life. Let me fight with you." Lena looked up at him, at this dangerous, complicated man who'd walked into her ER and seen her when no one else ever had. She should run, should protect herself from the inevitable pain of letting someone in, but she was so tired of running, so tired of being alone. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Adrian smiled, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. He pulled her to her feet, his arms wrapping around her in a hug that felt like coming home. Lena pressed her face against his chest and let herself be held, tears soaking into his shirt as something in her finally broke open. "I've got you," Adrian murmured into her hair. "I've got you, and I'm not letting go." And for the first time in her life, Lena believed him. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where she was. The bed beneath her was too soft, the sheets too expensive, the silence too complete. For a panicked moment, she thought she'd overslept for her shift, but then memory crashed back. Adrian, the penthouse, his arms around her as exhaustion finally dragged her under. She sat up slowly, her body aching in that deep bone way that came from weeks of pushing too hard. The bedroom was minimalist and masculine, all clean lines and dark colors, with only a single framed photograph on the dresser. She could see it from the bed. A younger Adrian, maybe 16, standing beside an older man with kind eyes and Marco's smile. The clock on the nightstand read 11:47 a.m. Lena hadn't slept past 7 in years. Voices filtered through the closed door, low, tense, speaking rapid Italian. She recognized Adrian's rough cadence, but the other voice was unfamiliar, harsher. Lena eased out of bed, her bare feet silent on the hardwood as she crept to the door and pressed her ear against it. "Can't be serious about this, Adrian. A nurse? Now?" "Watch your tone, Dante." Adrian's voice was cold in a way she hadn't heard before. Dangerous. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You bring some random girl home the same night Marco gets shot, and you expect us to what? Pretend it's not a liability." Lena is not random, and she's not a liability. Each word was clipped, controlled. "And if I hear you disrespecting her again, we're going to have a problem." A pause. Then Dante's voice slightly chastened. "I'm just trying to protect you, cousin. After what happened with Marco, everyone's going to be watching, waiting for weakness. Let them watch." "Adrian," I said, "drop it, Dante." The finality in Adrian's tone killed whatever argument was coming. "Now tell me about the shipment." Lena stepped back from the door, her heart racing. "Cousin? Shipment?" The casual discussion of violence and business that existed somewhere beyond the law. This was his world, the one she'd agreed to step into without thinking through the consequences. What the hell was she doing here? She should leave, should slip out while they were distracted and go back to her apartment, her job, her exhausting but predictable life. But even as the thought formed, Lena knew she wouldn't, because for the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen something worth keeping. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Lena? You awake?" Adrian's voice, gentler now. She crossed to the door and opened it to find him standing there with a coffee mug in one hand, concern etched across his features. "I heard voices," she said. "Didn't want to interrupt." "You wouldn't have been." He handed her the coffee, black with 2 sugars, exactly how she'd taken it last night. The fact that he'd remembered made her chest ache. Dante was just leaving. Over Adrian's shoulder, Lena could see a man in his early 30s, dark-haired and sharp-featured, watching her with open suspicion. He looked like Adrian, same strong jaw, same dangerous edge, but where Adrian's eyes held warmth when he looked at her, Dante's were cold calculation. "Dante, this is Lena Carter." Adrian's hand found the small of her back, a gesture that felt both possessive and protective. "Lena, my cousin Dante." "Nice to meet you." Lena kept her voice steady, even though she felt pinned by Dante's stare. "Likewise." Dante's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Adrian's told me absolutely nothing about you, which is fascinating given the circumstances." "The circumstances being that it's none of your business." Adrian's tone was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. "Don't you have somewhere to be?" Dante raised his hands in mock surrender. "I'm going, but we need to talk later about the Rivera situation. Tonight, the usual place." Adrian waited until Dante let himself out before turning his full attention to Lena. "Sorry about that. My family is protective." "Protective. That's one word for it." Lena sipped her coffee, grateful for something to do with her hands. "He thinks I'm a liability." "He thinks everyone's a liability until proven otherwise. It's what makes him good at his job." Adrian studied her face, reading the tension there. "Having second thoughts?" "Yes." "No." "Maybe." Lena didn't know how to answer that honestly. I don't know what I'm doing here, Adrian. This isn't my world. I don't know the rules. There's only one rule that matters. He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. You're under my protection now. That means no one touches you. No one threatens you. You're safe. But what does that make me? The question burst out before she could stop it. What am I to you? Some kind of... I don't even know what to call this. Call it whatever you want. His thumb traced her cheekbone, that gentle touch that made her want to lean into him. You're here because I want you here. Because when I look at you, I see something I didn't think I'd ever find. And what's that? Someone real. The honesty in his voice made her breath catch. Everyone in my life wants something. Money, power, protection. But you looked at me like a person, not a weapon, not a bank account, just me. Lena wanted to argue, to point out that she barely knew him, that this was happening too fast. But the truth was, she felt it too. That recognition, that pull, like something in her had been waiting for him. I have to go home eventually, she said quietly. I have a lease, bills, a job. About that. Adrian's expression turned carefully neutral. I may have handled some things while you were sleeping. Dread pooled in her stomach. What things? Your student loans are paid off. All of them. Lena's coffee mug slipped from her nerveless fingers. Adrian caught it before it hit the floor, his reflexes inhumanly fast, but she barely noticed. Her ears were ringing, her vision tunneling. You, what? Her voice came out strangled. Adrian, those loans were $70,000. $73,418. He set the mug on a nearby table. And 62 cents. It's handled. You can't just... Lena pressed her hands to her face, trying to process what he was telling her. That's not... I didn't ask you to do that. I know. His hands wrapped around her wrists, gently pulling them away so he could see her face. But you would have spent the next 10 years drowning in interest, working yourself to death just to make minimum payments. I wasn't going to watch that happen. It was my debt, Adrian, my responsibility. And now it's not. There was no compromise in his voice. I'm not taking it back, Lena. The money's gone. Done. You're free. Free. The word felt foreign, impossible. She'd carried that debt like a stone around her neck for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. And now this man, this dangerous, complicated man, had cut it loose like it was nothing. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you do this? Because I can. Because you deserve not to be crushed by a system designed to keep people like you desperate. Adrian's grip tightened, grounding her. Because the thought of you working yourself to death for money you'll never have makes me want to burn something down. Lena laughed, but it came out wet and broken. You're insane. Probably. A smile tugged at his lips, but I'm insane with excellent cash flow, so at least there's that. Despite everything, she found herself smiling back. What am I supposed to do now? Whatever you want. He pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her. Go back to the hospital if that's what makes you happy. Find a better job. Take time to figure out what you actually want instead of just surviving. Want. Lena couldn't remember the last time she'd thought about what she wanted instead of what she needed. The concept felt dangerous, indulgent, but also intoxicating. I don't know what I want, she admitted against his chest. Then we'll figure it out together. Adrian pressed a kiss to the top of her head, casual and intimate. But first, you need to eat. Real food, not hospital vending machine garbage. They ended up at a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy, the kind of place with red checkered tablecloths and family photos on the walls. The owner greeted Adrian like a long-lost son, kissing both his cheeks and ushering them to a corner booth with the kind of reverence usually reserved for royalty. Mr. Moretti, it's been too long. And who is this beautiful young lady? This is Lena. Adrian's hand found hers across the table. Lena, meet Giuseppe. He makes the best carbonara in Chicago. The best in America, Giuseppe corrected, beaming. I'll bring you the special, yes? And wine. The good stuff, not the tourist garbage. As Giuseppe bustled away, Lena leaned forward. Does everyone in this city know who you are? Most, Adrian shrugged. My father had a presence. I inherited it, along with everything else. Everything else being a criminal empire. Among other things, he didn't flinch from the accusation. I won't lie to you about what I do, Lena. I move money, control territory, make sure certain shipments get where they need to go without interference. It's not legal and it's not always moral, but it's what I am. She should have been horrified, should have stood up and walked out. But instead, Lena found herself asking, "Do you hurt people?" Sometimes. His eyes were steady on hers. When they hurt mine first. When there's no other choice. I don't kill for pleasure, if that's what you're asking. But I won't pretend I'm some kind of Robin Hood either. What I do, it's about survival, power, making sure no one can take from me what my father built. And what did your father build? An empire that kept our community safe when the cops wouldn't. There was pride in Adrian's voice, but also something darker. The Moretti family has run Chicago's West Side for 3 generations. We protect our own, settle disputes, make sure businesses can operate without harassment. It's not pretty, but it's necessary. Giuseppe returned with wine and a platter of antipasti before Lena could respond. She watched Adrian interact with the old man, easy and warm, asking about his grandson's baseball team, complimenting the fresh mozzarella. This version of him felt more real than the dangerous crime boss who'd walked into her ER, and somehow that was more terrifying. "You're thinking too hard," Adrian said once Giuseppe left. "I can see it on your face. I'm trying to reconcile the man who paid off my student loans with the one who just casually admitted to moving illegal shipments and hurting people." Lena picked at the bruschetta, her appetite suddenly uncertain. "It's a lot to process. I'm not asking you to process it all at once." He poured wine into both their glasses. "I'm just asking you not to run. Not yet." "What if I can't do this?" The question came out small, vulnerable. "What if I'm not strong enough for your world? You survived 19 years in the foster system and put yourself through nursing school working 3 jobs. Adrian's voice was fierce. "You're stronger than anyone I know. The question isn't whether you can handle my world. It's whether my world deserves you." The food arrived then, steaming plates of pasta that smelled like heaven. Lena ate mechanically, her mind spinning. Every instinct she'd developed to survive was screaming at her to run, but a deeper part, the part that was tired of being alone, wanted to stay. "Tell me about Marco," she said eventually. "The man who was shot." Adrian's expression softened. "Marco Rossini. He's been with my family since before I was born. When my father died and the vultures started circling, Marco made it clear that anyone who touched me would answer to him. He kept me alive, taught me the business, made me strong enough to take back what was mine. You love him. Like a father. Simple, honest. He's the only family I trust completely." "What happened last night? Who shot him?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "A disagreement with one of our suppliers. Antonio Rivera thinks he can renegotiate our arrangement by force. He's wrong. You're going after him." It wasn't a question. "I'm going to remind him why it's a bad idea to shoot my people." The coldness was back in Adrian's voice, that dangerous edge. "And then we're going to have a very frank conversation about respect." Lena should have been afraid, should have recoiled from the violence implicit in his words. But all she felt was a strange certainty that whoever this Rivera was, he'd made a fatal mistake. "Will you hurt him?" "Yes." No hesitation. "He hurt mine. There are consequences for that." "What if he hurts you back?" Adrian reached across the table, his fingers lacing through hers. "Then I guess you'll have to stitch me up again, Piccola." They finished lunch in comfortable silence, and Lena felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. This was insane, all of it, but for the first time in her life she felt like she was living instead of just surviving. That had to count for something. As they walked back to Adrian's car, his phone buzzed. He checked it, and something dark crossed his expression. "What?" Lena asked. "Marco's awake, asking for me." Adrian opened the car door for her. "I need to go to the hospital. You want to come?" Did she? Lena thought about the man on the gurney, the one who'd looked at her with sharp, assessing eyes, even through his pain, the one who meant everything to Adrian. "Yeah," she said. "Yeah, I do." Chicago Memorial looked different in daylight, less chaotic but somehow more depressing. Adrian navigated the halls with the confidence of someone who owned the place, and maybe he did. Lena remembered his comment about donating to the cardiac wing. No one stopped them as they made their way to the private recovery wing, though several nurses did double takes when they recognized her. Marco was in a corner room with a view of the city, surrounded by enough flowers to stock a funeral home. He looked pale, but alert, his shoulder heavily bandaged, and when Adrian entered, his face split into a grin. "There he is. My boy." Marco's voice was rough but warm. "They tell me I'm not allowed to die because you paid them too much money to let it happen." Something like that. Adrian crossed to the bed, gripping Marco's good hand with obvious affection. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot by an amateur with bad aim." Marco's eyes tracked to Lena, still hovering in the doorway. "And who's this? The pretty nurse who patched you up last night?" "Lena Carter." She stepped forward, feeling oddly nervous. "I'm glad you're okay." "Okay is relative, but I'll take it." Marco studied her with the same intensity Adrian had, like he was cataloging every detail. "So, you're the one who's got my boy acting like a lovesick fool." "Marco," Adrian started, but Marco waved him off. "Don't Marco me. You paid off her student loans. Dante told me." The old man's grin widened. "In my day, we just bought girls' flowers, but I guess inflation hit the romance market too." Lena felt her face heat. "He didn't have to do that." "No, he didn't, which is why he did." Marco's expression turned serious. "Adrian doesn't do anything he doesn't want to, girl. If he brought you into this life, it's because he sees something worth protecting." I keep hearing that word. Protecting. Lena crossed her arms. "I don't need protecting. I've been taking care of myself my whole life." "And that's exactly why you need it now." Marco shifted in the bed, wincing. Strong people always think they have to do everything alone. But the strongest thing you can do is let someone stand with you. The words hit harder than Lena expected. She looked at Adrian, who was watching her with that careful intensity, and felt something in her chest crack wider. "The doctor says you'll make a full recovery," Adrian said, changing the subject with the subtlety of a bulldozer. 6 weeks before you're cleared for active duty. 6 weeks of sitting on my ass while Rivera thinks he won." Marco's face darkened. "We need to move on him, Adrian. Soon." "I know." Adrian's voice was grim. "Dante's working on it. We'll have a location by tonight." "Then what are you waiting for? Go. Send a message that we don't tolerate." "I'm not leaving you alone in a hospital bed to go start a war." Adrian's tone brooked no argument. "Rivera will get what's coming to him, but not at the cost of your safety." "My safety?" Marco laughed, but it turned into a cough. "Boy, I've been getting shot at since before you were born. I can handle one night alone." "You're not alone." Adrian gestured to the door, where Lena now noticed 2 large men in suits standing guard. "Carlos and Tommy aren't leaving your side until you're discharged, and I've got 3 more rotating shifts covering the hospital entrances." "You're being paranoid." "I'm being careful." Adrian's expression was hard. "Rivera shot you to send a message. I'm sending one back. You don't touch what's mine and walk away." The weight of those words hung in the air. Lena understood then what she was seeing, not just affection between a boss and his lieutenant, but genuine family. The kind she'd never had, forged in violence and loyalty instead of blood. "You should go," Marco said eventually, his eyes kind as they landed on Lena. "Take your girl somewhere nice. Let her see that you're not just a thug with good taste in suits." "I'm working on it." Adrian bent to press a kiss to Marco's forehead, a gesture so tender it made Lena's throat tight. "Call if you need anything. I mean it." "I will. And Adrian?" Marco waited until Adrian met his eyes. "She's good for you. I can tell. Don't screw it up." "Wasn't planning on it." They left Marco's room and made their way back to the car in silence. Lena could feel the tension radiating off Adrian. Worry for Marco, anger at Rivera, something else she couldn't quite name. "He's right, you know," she said once they were on the road. "I am good for you." Adrian's laugh was surprised and genuine. Confident. Just honest. She reached over to take his hand. "Thank you for letting me meet him, for including me. You're part of this now, Lena, part of my life. That means meeting the people who matter." His grip tightened on hers. "Fair warning, there are going to be more Marcos and Dantes. Some will like you, some won't. But none of them get a vote in whether you stay." "Just you?" "Just me." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. And you, obviously. You get the deciding vote. Lena looked out the window at the city rushing past and realized with startling clarity that she'd already made her decision. Somewhere between the ER and this moment, she'd stopped running, stopped surviving, started living. Take me home, she said quietly, to your place. I need to see if this feels real. Adrian didn't answer with words. He just changed lanes, heading north toward the penthouse, and Lena felt something settle in her chest. Not peace exactly. She was too tangled up in questions and fear for that. But certainty. For the first time in her life, Lena Carter wasn't alone. And whatever came next, whatever darkness Adrian's world held, she was going to face it with him. The penthouse felt different in daylight, less like a cage and more like a sanctuary. Adrian gave her space to explore, disappearing into his office to make calls while Lena wandered through rooms that spoke of wealth, but not warmth. Everything was expensive, carefully chosen, but nothing felt personal except that one photograph in the bedroom. She found herself drawn back to it, young Adrian with the older man and Marco. The three of them looked happy, unguarded in a way she'd never seen Adrian be. She picked up the frame, studying the details. That's my father. Adrian's voice came from the doorway. Antonio Moretti, taken about 6 months before he died. What happened to him? Cancer. Adrian crossed to stand beside her, his eyes on the photograph. Aggressive, fast-moving. By the time they caught it, there was nothing to do but wait. He lasted 4 months. I'm sorry. Don't be. He lived the life he chose, died with his family around him. There are worse endings. Adrian took the frame from her hands, setting it back on the dresser with careful precision. After he was gone, everything fell apart. His lieutenants started circling, trying to carve up territory. Our allies started making moves, testing if I was weak, and I was. 16 years old, grieving, with no idea how to hold an empire together. But you did, because of Marco. The gratitude in his voice was absolute. He could have taken everything, could have pushed me out and run things himself. Instead, he made himself a target by backing me, taught me how to be ruthless when I needed to be, merciful when I could afford it, made me into someone worthy of my father's legacy. Lena turned to face him fully. And what legacy is that? Protection, community, making sure our people have what they need to survive. Adrian's expression was fierce. My father didn't build an empire just for power. He built it because the system failed us, failed our community. So we made our own system, our own rules. It's not perfect, but it's ours. And Rivera? Where does he fit into this system? He doesn't anymore. The coldness was back, that dangerous edge. He's a supplier who got greedy, decided he could charge more, deliver less, and we'd just accept it because switching suppliers is complicated. Then when Marco pushed back, he decided to send a message with bullets. So you're going to send one back? Yes. No hesitation, no apology. In my world, Lena, weakness is death. You let someone shoot your lieutenant and walk away, you're telling everyone that you're soft, that you can be pushed. I can't afford that. Lena studied his face, the hard line of his jaw, the steel in his eyes, the way he held himself like a weapon always ready to strike. This was who Adrian Moretti really was. Not the gentleman who'd held her while she cried, but a predator who'd survived by being more dangerous than anyone who threatened him. When? She asked quietly. Tonight. Dante's got eyes on Rivera's location. We move at midnight. And then what? What? Kill him? If necessary. Adrian's voice was flat. Preferably I make him understand that crossing the Moretti family has consequences, and he spends the rest of his miserable life regretting it. But if it comes down to him or mine, I choose mine every time. Lena should have been horrified, should have packed her things. Except she didn't have things here, did she? This wasn't her home, wasn't her life. She was just a girl playing dress-up in a world she didn't understand. I can hear you thinking. Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. What's going on in that head? I don't know if I can do this. The admission hurt. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this world. For you. You're stronger than you think. No, I'm not. Lena pulled away, pacing to the window to stare out at the city. I'm just a girl who spent her whole life being invisible, being nothing. And now you want me to, what? Stand beside you while you go to war? Pretend I'm okay with violence and crime and I want you to be yourself. Adrian's voice cut through her spiral. That's all. I don't need you to be okay with what I do. I just need you not to run from it. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Piccola. You know that better than anyone. He crossed to her, his hand settling on her shoulders. I'm not asking you to become someone else. I'm asking you to let me give you a life where you don't have to work yourself to death just to survive. Where you matter. Where you're seen. But at what cost? Lena turned to face him, tears burning her eyes. What happens when your enemies decide I'm a weakness? When someone uses me to hurt you? Then I make them regret it. Simple. Absolute. You're under my protection, Lena. That means something in this city. It means no one touches you without answering to me. And if you can't protect me, if you're not there, I'll always be there. His grip tightened, grounding her. That's what this is. That's what I'm offering. Not just money or safety, but me. All of me, for as long as you'll have me. The words hung between them. Too much too soon, but also somehow not enough. Lena looked up at this dangerous, complicated man who'd walked into her life and turned it upside down and felt her resistance crumbling. I'm scared, she whispered. Good. Adrian's smile was sad. Being scared means you understand what this is, what we are. But being scared doesn't mean you have to run. What if I'm not brave enough to stay? Then I'll wait. He pressed his forehead to hers, their breath mingling. I'll wait as long as it takes for you to believe you deserve this. Deserve me. Deserve a life that's more than just surviving. Lena closed her eyes, tears spilling over. No one had ever waited for her. No one had ever thought she was worth waiting for. The realization broke something open in her chest, some last defense finally crumbling. Okay, she breathed. Okay, I'll stay. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. But don't make me watch you become a monster. Her voice cracked. Do what you have to do tonight, but don't let me see you enjoy it. Don't let me see you become someone I can't recognize. Adrian pulled back to look at her, his expression raw. I can't promise I won't do terrible things, Lena. That's not who I am. But I can promise that whatever I do, it's to protect what's mine, to keep you safe, to make sure no one ever threatens you again. It wasn't the reassurance she wanted, but it was honest, and somehow that mattered more. Then go, she said. Do what you need to do. I'll be here when you get back. The relief in his eyes was stark, vulnerable. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. I'll come back, I promise. You better. Lena tried to smile, but it came out shaky. Because I didn't survive this long just to lose you to some asshole with bad aim. Adrian laughed, and it was real, breaking the tension that had been suffocating them. I'll keep that in mind while I'm dodging bullets. He left an hour later, dressed all in black, looking every inch the dangerous criminal he was. Lena watched from the window as his car disappeared into traffic and tried not to think about all the ways this night could go wrong. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Lena tried to distract herself, found a book on Adrian's shelf about architecture, made tea in his pristine kitchen, stared at the city lights until they blurred into meaningless streaks of gold and white. But her mind kept circling back to Adrian somewhere out there in the dark, doing things she didn't want to imagine. Around 11, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop pacing. You're going to wear a hole in my floor. Lena spun toward the windows, her heart hammering. Down on the street, barely visible in the shadows between streetlights, she could make out a figure. One of Adrian's men, watching, protecting her even while he was gone. She texted back. How did you get my number? Boss gave it to me. Said to keep you company if you needed it. You need it? Lena looked at the message for a long moment, then typed. No, but thank you. He'll come back. Always does. She wanted to believe that. Needed to believe it. But the knot of anxiety in her stomach wouldn't loosen, and as midnight came and went, Lena felt herself starting to unravel. At 1:47 a.m., the penthouse door opened. Lena was off the couch before she'd consciously decided to move, her heart in her throat as Adrian stepped through. He was alive, whole, but there was blood on his shirt and a cut above his eyebrow that was still bleeding sluggishly. His knuckles were split and bruised, and he moved with the careful stiffness of someone holding pain at bay through sheer willpower. "You're hurt." Lena crossed to him, her nurse training kicking in automatically. "Sit down. Let me. It's not my blood." Adrian's voice was flat, exhausted. "Most of it, anyway." Lena froze, her hands hovering over his chest. Not his blood, which meant it belonged to someone else. To Rivera, probably. The man Adrian had gone to hurt, to send a message to make an example of. "Sit," she said again, firmer this time. "I don't care whose blood it is. You're bleeding, and I'm going to fix it." Something in Adrian's expression cracked. He let her guide him to the couch, sinking down with a wince that he couldn't quite hide. Lena disappeared into the bathroom, gathering supplies with hands that shook slightly, then returned to find him staring at nothing, his eyes distant. "What happened?" She knelt in front of him, cleaning the cut on his forehead with gentle efficiency. "We found Rivera at one of his warehouses. Had a conversation about respect and consequences." Adrian's jaw was tight. He understood by the end. "Is he dead?" "No." Adrian met her eyes, and she saw the truth there. The violence, the darkness, but also the restraint. Broken ribs, shattered kneecap, and a very clear understanding that if he ever comes near my family again, he won't walk away. But alive. Lena's hands paused. She'd expected worse, expected Adrian to come back with blood on his hands and murder in his eyes. But this was measured violence, calculated cruelty designed to send a message without starting an all-out war. "You could have killed him," she said quietly. "I wanted to." The honesty in his voice was brutal. "When I saw Marco in that hospital bed, when I thought about what could have happened, I wanted to put a bullet in Rivera's head and be done with it. But you didn't. Because you asked me not to become a monster." Adrian's hand came up to cover hers where it rested on his chest. "And because Marco wouldn't want me starting a war over him. He'd say it was bad for business, inefficient, messy. So I made Rivera understand that there are fates worse than death. And then I left him alive to spread the word." Lena processed this, trying to reconcile the violence he described with the gentleness in his touch. "Did anyone else get hurt? Your people?" Dante took a graze to the shoulder. "He's fine, already giving me hell about being too soft." A ghost of a smile crossed Adrian's face. "Carlos broke his hand on one of Rivera's guards' faces. And I've got a cracked rib probably from when one of them got a lucky hit in before Tommy put him down." "Put him down?" The clinical phrase made her stomach turn. "You mean killed him?" "He pulled a gun on me." Tommy reacted. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was describing traffic. "It was him or me, Lena, and I promised you I'd come back." She should be horrified, should pull away, call the police, do something. But all Lena felt was a bone-deep relief that Adrian was here, alive, still looking at her like she was something precious instead of someone who'd witnessed too much. "Let me see your ribs," she said instead. Adrian stripped off his ruined shirt with a wince, revealing the lean muscle and old scars she'd noticed before, now joined by fresh bruising along his left side, purple, black, and angry, spreading across his ribs like a storm cloud. Lena's fingers ghosted over the injury, assessing with practiced precision. "Definitely cracked, maybe broken. You need an X-ray. I've had worse. That's not the reassurance you think it is." She pressed gently, watching him flinch. "You could have a punctured lung if the bone shifted wrong." "My breathing's fine." To prove it, Adrian took a deep breath, then immediately regretted it based on how his face went white. "Mostly fine." "You're an idiot." But Lena's voice was gentle as she wrapped his ribs with practiced efficiency, her hands steady, even though her heart was racing. "A brave, stupid idiot who's going to get himself killed one of these days." "Not today, though." Adrian caught her hand, pressing it flat against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat, strong, steady, alive. "I came back, like I promised." "Yeah," Lena's voice cracked. "You did." They stayed like that for a long moment, her hand on his chest, his eyes locked on hers, the space between them charged with something that felt too big to name. Then Adrian pulled her up onto the couch beside him, careful of his injuries, and wrapped his arms around her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. I was scared, Lena admitted against his neck. The whole time you were gone, I was terrified you wouldn't come back. I'll always come back to you. His hand stroked through her hair, soothing. Always, Piccola. That's not a promise I make lightly. What if one day you can't? What if someone gets lucky, or you're outnumbered, or then Dante will make sure you're taken care of. There's money set aside, accounts in your name, instructions for... Stop. Lena pulled back to look at him, tears burning her eyes. Don't talk about dying like it's a business transaction. Don't plan for a future where you're not in it. I have to. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. This is my world, Lena. Death is always a possibility. I need to know that if something happens to me, you'll be safe. That you'll have everything you need to build whatever life you want. I don't want your money or your accounts. The words burst out fierce and desperate. I want you, alive, here. That's all I want. Something in Adrian's expression shifted, softened into something that looked almost like wonder. You really mean that? Of course I mean it. Lena's hands framed his face, forcing him to look at her. I didn't fall for your money or your power or whatever empire you've built. I fell for you. The man who held me while I cried, who paid off my debts without asking for anything in return, who looks at me like I'm the most important thing in his world. You are. The words were raw, honest. The most important thing. The only thing that matters. Adrian kissed her then, and it was different from before, deeper, more desperate, like he was trying to prove through touch what words couldn't convey. Lena kissed him back with everything she had, tasting blood and violence, and underneath it all, something that felt dangerously like love. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, not because you're scared or because I'm hurt, but because you want to. I want to. Lena's voice was steady, certain. I want to stay, Adrian, for tonight and whatever comes after. They moved to the bedroom together, Adrian moving carefully around his injuries while Lena helped him out of his blood-stained pants and into clean clothes. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with sex, just the quiet comfort of taking care of someone, of being taken care of in return. They lay in the dark, Lena's head on Adrian's good side, his arm wrapped around her, and for the first time since he'd walked into her ER, she felt something settle in her chest. Not peace, exactly. There was too much violence and uncertainty for that. But belonging. The sense that for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Tell me something, Adrian said into the darkness. Something about you that no one else knows. Lena thought about it, about all the secrets she'd carried alone her whole life. I used to steal books from the library when I was in foster care. Not because I couldn't check them out, but because I wanted something that was mine, something I could keep forever. What kind of books? Fairy tales mostly, stories where the orphan gets rescued, finds their family, lives happily ever after. She laughed, but it came out bitter. Took me years to accept that real life doesn't work like that nobody was coming to save me. And then I showed up and tried to do exactly that. Adrian's voice was wry. Bet you're regretting those stolen books now. Actually, I'm starting to think maybe they were right. Lena traced patterns on his chest, careful to avoid his injuries. Maybe happily ever after exists, just not in the way I imagined. What do you imagine now? This, she gestured to the darkness, to them, to the life she was building with a criminal who looked at her like she hung the moon. Something real, messy, complicated. But ours? Adrian's arms tightened around her. I can give you that, real, messy, complicated. Those I'm excellent at. It's the simple, easy things I struggle with. Good thing I don't want simple or easy. Lena pressed a kiss to his shoulder. I want you, all of you, even the parts that scare me. They fell asleep like that, tangled together in the darkness. And Lena dreamed of stolen fairy tales and dangerous men with gentle hands. She woke to sunlight and the sound of voices in the living room, male voices, tense and urgent. Lena slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Adrian, and pulled on one of his shirts before padding to the door. Not sustainable, Adrian. You can't keep her here forever. That was Dante's voice, sharp with frustration. I can do whatever the hell I want. Adrian sounded tired, his voice rough with sleep and pain. She stays as long as she wants to stay. And when Rivera's friends decide she's a target, when word gets out that the great Adrian Moretti has a weakness, then I deal with it, same way I've dealt with everything else. Lena pushed the door open, stepping into the living room. Both men turned to look at her, Adrian with warmth and concern, Dante with barely concealed irritation. "Good morning," she said, keeping her voice level even though her heart was racing. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Of course not." Adrian crossed to her, pressing a kiss to her temple like it was the most natural thing in the world. Dante was just leaving. "Actually, I need to talk to you both." Dante's expression was serious. "We've got a situation." The warmth drained from Adrian's face, replaced by cold calculation. "What kind of situation?" "Santoro wants a meeting. Says he has information about who's been moving against you. Claims it's bigger than Rivera." "Santoro doesn't do favors." Adrian's voice was flat. "What does he want in return?" "That's the concerning part. He says he'll tell you at the meeting. Tonight, neutral ground. Just the two of you." Dante paused. "It could be a trap." "Of course it's a trap." Adrian scrubbed a hand over his face, wincing when the movement pulled his ribs. "The question is what kind of trap, and whether I can afford not to spring it." "Who's Santoro?" Lena asked. Both men looked at her like they'd forgotten she was there. Then Adrian sighed. "Vincent Santoro runs the east side. We have an understanding. He doesn't move on my territory. I don't move on his. But he's ambitious, and ambitious men are dangerous. So don't go." It seemed obvious to Lena. If it's a trap, why walk into it? "Because if he really does have information about who's moving against me, I need to know." Adrian's jaw was tight. Rivera was small-time, sloppy. Someone had to put him up to shooting Marco, someone who knew exactly what buttons to push to start a war. "And you think it's Santoro?" "I think Santoro knows who it is, whether he's involved or just looking to profit from the chaos." Adrian shrugged, then winced. "Either way, I need that information." Dante crossed his arms. "I'll come with you. Extra security. Make it clear that if he tries anything—" "No!" Adrian's voice was absolute. He specified alone. "If I show up with an army, he'll bolt and we'll never know what he knows." "Then you're walking into a death trap." Dante's frustration was clear. "For what? Information that's probably garbage anyway?" "For the chance to end this before it gets worse." Adrian turned to Lena, his expression softening. "I need to do this, Piccola. I need to know what we're up against." "What about your ribs? You can barely move without wincing." Lena heard the fear in her own voice and hated it. "You're not in any condition to fight if things go wrong." "Then I'll make sure things don't go wrong." Adrian pulled her close, careful of his injuries. "I'll be smart, careful, and I'll come back. I promise." "You promised that last night, too." Her voice cracked. "And you came back bleeding." "But I came back." His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized was falling. "I'll always come back to you. That's the one promise I'll never break." Dante made a disgusted sound. "If you two are done being nauseating, we need to plan this out. Figure out backup protocols, exit strategies, what to do if—" "I know how to handle a meeting, Dante." Adrian's voice had gone cold again, all business. "But you're right about backup. I want eyes on every entrance, snipers on the surrounding buildings, cars ready for extraction. If this goes sideways, I want options." They spent the next hour planning, Dante and Adrian speaking in a shorthand Lena didn't fully understand, talking about positions and timing and contingencies. She made coffee and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong, all the reasons Adrian might not come back this time. When Dante finally left, Adrian found her in the kitchen, staring out at the city. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I can hear you spiraling from here," he murmured. "I'm not spiraling, I'm just—" Lena stopped, took a breath. "I'm scared. I'm scared every time you walk out that door, that you won't come back. And I hate feeling this way. Hate being so dependent on someone else for my own peace of mind." "You're not dependent. You're invested." Adrian turned her to face him. "There's a difference. Dependence means you can't function without me. Investment means you've chosen to care about what happens to me. Semantics. Important ones. He kissed her forehead, gentle and sweet. I'm invested in you too, Lena, in your safety, your happiness, your life. That's what this is. Two people choosing each other, even when it's terrifying. I wish it was less terrifying. If it wasn't terrifying, it wouldn't be real. Adrian's smile was sad. Real love is always scary. It means giving someone the power to destroy you and trusting them not to use it. Love. The word hung between them, unacknowledged, but impossible to ignore. Lena looked up at this dangerous, complicated man who'd walked into her life and turned it upside down, and felt the truth of it settle in her chest. I love you, she said quietly. I know it's too soon, I know it's crazy, but I do. I love you, Adrian Moretti, and if you get yourself killed tonight, I'm going to find a way to bring you back just so I can kill you myself. Adrian's laugh was surprised and genuine and full of joy. I love you too, Piccola. Have since the moment you told me to sit down and stop bleeding on your ER floor. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Lena felt something in her chest bloom open. This was it, the fairy tale ending she'd read about in stolen library books. Not perfect, not simple, but real in a way nothing else in her life had ever been. Come back to me, she whispered against his lips. Always, he promised. Always. The rest of the day passed in a haze of nervous energy. Adrian made calls, checked in with his people, prepared for every contingency. Lena tried to stay out of the way, but he kept pulling her back, like he needed to touch her to stay grounded. As evening approached, Adrian dressed carefully. Black suit, white shirt, no tie. He looked every inch the crime boss, dangerous and untouchable. But when he turned to Lena, his eyes were soft. If something happens, if I don't come back, Dante will take care of you. There's information in the safe, account numbers, contacts. Everything you need. Stop planning my life without you in it. Lena crossed to him, adjusting his collar with hands that trembled slightly. You're coming back. We already established this. I know, but just in case, no. She cut him off with a kiss, fierce and desperate. No, just in case. You're coming back because I'm not done with you yet. We're not done. Understand? Adrian smiled against her lips. Yes, ma'am. Good. Lena stepped back, trying to memorize every detail of him. Now go. Be smart. Be careful. And if this Santoro tries anything, break his kneecaps and come home. That's my girl. Adrian kissed her once more, then headed for the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back. I love you, Lena Carter. I love you too. Her voice was steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. Don't make me regret saying it. He left, and the apartment felt impossibly empty. Lena stood at the window, watching his car disappear into traffic, and tried to believe that he was right, that he'd come back, that they'd have more than just these few stolen days together. Hours passed. The same guard from last night texted her updates. Boss is at the location. All quiet so far. Then later, meeting started. Everything looks clean. Lena paced, unable to sit still, unable to do anything but wait and worry, and hate herself for being so helpless. At 11:33 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Lena Carter? The voice was male, smooth, with an edge she didn't like. I think we should meet. Her blood went cold. Who is this? A friend of Adrian's. Well, friend might be strong. Business associate, shall we say. A pause. He's indisposed at the moment, but he asked me to call you, said you'd want to know he's all right. Let me talk to him. I'm afraid that's not possible right now. But I promise, he's alive. Mostly unharmed, and he'll stay that way as long as you and I can come to an understanding. The world tilted. Lena gripped the counter, trying to stay upright. What kind of understanding? The kind where you come meet me, and nobody else has to get hurt. Just a conversation, Lena, between two people who care about Adrian's well-being. And if I refuse? Then Adrian finds out what happens when you break my trust. The voice was pleasant, conversational. I'd hate for that to be necessary. He's such a promising young man. Lena's mind raced, weighing options. She could call Dante, bring in Adrian's people. But if this man, Santoro had to be Santoro, had Adrian, then making a move could get him killed. Where? She asked quietly. Smart girl. There's a warehouse on the south side. I'll text you the address. Come alone, come unarmed, and we'll have a nice chat. A pause. Oh, and Lena? Don't keep me waiting. Adrian's time is rather valuable, and I'd hate to waste it. The line went dead. A moment later, her phone buzzed with an address. Lena stared at it, her heart hammering. Every instinct was screaming at her to call for help, to not walk into an obvious trap. But if there was even a chance that Adrian was in danger, that she could help him, she grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. The warehouse district at night was a graveyard of industry. Empty buildings with broken windows, streets littered with debris. The kind of place where screams wouldn't carry and bodies could disappear without questions. Lena's Uber driver had refused to take her all the way, dropping her 2 blocks from the address with a look that said she was making a terrible decision. He wasn't wrong. Lena walked through the darkness, her phone clutched in one hand, every nerve screaming at her to turn around. But the image of Adrian hurt, bleeding, trapped because of her. It kept her feet moving forward even as her rational mind begged her to stop. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking shadow against the city lights. A single door stood open, light spilling out into the darkness like an invitation. Or a trap. Lena took a breath, steadied herself, and walked through. The interior was surprisingly clean, concrete floors swept clear, overhead lights humming, and in the center of the space, a table with 2 chairs. A man sat in one, mid-40s with silver threading through dark hair, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in the industrial setting. He smiled when he saw her, the expression pleasant and somehow more terrifying than a scowl would have been. Lena Carter, thank you for coming. Vincent Santoro stood, gesturing to the empty chair. Please sit. We have so much to discuss. Where's Adrian? Her voice was steadier than she felt. Safe. For now. Santoro's smile didn't waver. Sit, please. This will go much more smoothly if we're civilized about it. Lena's eyes scanned the warehouse, looking for exits, for weapons, for any sign of Adrian. She saw guards, 3 of them, posted at strategic points, all armed. No way out except through them. She sat. Very good. Santoro settled back into his chair, looking relaxed and comfortable. I apologize for the dramatics, but I needed to ensure we could speak privately. Adrian can be so protective. He wouldn't have let you come if he'd known. You lied. He's not here. Actually, I didn't lie. I said he was indisposed, which he is, and that he'd want you to know he's all right, which I'm sure he would if he were conscious to want anything. Lena's blood turned to ice. What did you do to him? Nothing permanent, a sedative, carefully dosed. He'll wake up in a few hours with a headache and a bruised ego. Santoro poured wine into 2 glasses, sliding one toward Lena. I needed him out of the way for this conversation. Adrian tends to be irrational where you're concerned. I'm not drinking that. Suit yourself. Santoro sipped his own wine, unbothered. Let me be direct, Lena. Adrian Moretti is a problem. He's young, ambitious, and far too principled for his own good. He turns down profitable opportunities because they don't align with his moral code. He protects his community instead of exploiting it. And now he's fallen in love with a nurse who's made him even softer than before. If you think love makes him soft, you don't know him at all. On the contrary, I know him very well. I knew his father, watched Antonio build an empire on blood and loyalty, and I've watched Adrian try to be a better man than his father was. Santoro's expression hardened. It's admirable. It's also unsustainable. This city doesn't reward mercy, Lena. It rewards strength, and Adrian's compassion is going to get him killed. So you decided to kill him first? Lena's hands clenched into fists under the table. That's your solution? I decided to remove him from the equation, yes, but not by killing him. That would make him a martyr, unite his people against me. No, I'm going to break him. Systematically dismantle everything he's built until there's nothing left but a shell of a man who used to matter. Santoro leaned forward. And you, my dear, are going to help me do it. I'd rather die. I thought you might say that. Santoro pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, then turned it to face her. Before you commit to martyrdom, you should see what you're dying for. The screen showed a video feed. Adrian, unconscious and zip-tied to a chair in what looked like a basement. His face was pale, blood crusted at his temple, And even through the grainy video, Lena could see the rise and fall of his chest was too shallow. "He's hurt," her voice cracked. "Just the sedative. But he could be hurt very badly if you don't cooperate." Santoro pocketed the phone. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Chicago. Tonight. I'll provide you with money. More than enough to start over anywhere you want. New identity, new life, completely untraceable. And in return, you disappear from Adrian's world forever. And if I refuse? Then I kill everyone he loves, starting with Marco Rossini." Santoro's voice was pleasant, conversational. "I'll burn down his clubs, his warehouses, everything he's built. I'll make him watch his empire crumble, his people die, all because he was too stubborn to let you go. And then, when he's broken and empty and begging for death, I'll kill him too." Lena felt the words like physical blows. This wasn't a negotiation. It was emotional terrorism, designed to use her love for Adrian as a weapon against him. "Why me?" she asked. "Why go through all this trouble? Just kill him and take what you want." "Because Adrian dead makes him a legend. Adrian broken and alive makes him a cautionary tale." Santoro stood pacing around the table like a professor delivering a lecture. "And you, Lena Carter, are the key to breaking him. He loves you, truly, completely loves you in a way I've never seen him love anything. If you leave him, if you choose to walk away, it will destroy him more thoroughly than any bullet could. He'll know you forced me. He'll come after you." "Will he?" Santoro smiled. "Or will he wonder if maybe you realized what he really is? A criminal, a killer, a man who deals in violence and corruption. Maybe you looked at your life with him and decided survival wasn't enough, that you wanted more than to be a crime boss's pet." The words hit too close to fears Lena had already voiced, doubts she'd confessed to Adrian in moments of weakness. Santoro had done his homework, knew exactly where to twist the knife. "I won't do it." Her voice was shaking but firm. "I won't leave him. Not for you, not for money, not for anything." "Then you'll watch him die." Santoro's pleasant facade cracked, revealing the coldness underneath. "I gave you a chance to save him, Lena, to let him live, even if it's without you. But if you're too selfish to take it, if you'd rather cling to your fairy tale romance while his empire burns, then his blood is on your hands." Lena stood, her chair scraping against the concrete. "You're going to kill him anyway. Whether I leave or stay, you're going to eliminate him because he's competition. This whole thing is just you getting off on psychological torture before you do what you were always planning to do." "Smart girl." Santoro's smile returned. "You're right, of course. Adrian dies either way. But this way, you get to live with the knowledge that you could have made his last days peaceful, that instead of spending his final moments with the woman he loves, he'll spend them alone, wondering why you abandoned him." "I want to see him." The demand came out before Lena could think it through. "Right now. Proof of life, or I walk out of here and call every cop in Chicago." "And tell them what? That the nurse who's been sleeping with a known criminal is concerned about his welfare?" Santoro laughed. "By the time they take you seriously, Adrian will be dead and you'll be an accessory. But fine, you want to see him? Let's go." He gestured to one of the guards, who moved to a door at the back of the warehouse. Santoro took Lena's arm with a grip that was just shy of painful, guiding her across the space. Her mind raced, looking for options, for ways out. But she was unarmed, outnumbered, and completely out of her depth. The basement was exactly as grim as she'd imagined. Concrete walls weeping moisture, a single bare bulb, and Adrian slumped in a metal chair in the center. His hands were zip-tied behind him, his head hanging forward, and Lena's nurse training cataloged injuries automatically. Contusion at the left temple, possible concussion, breathing shallow but steady, pupils. She couldn't see his pupils. Needed to check his pupils. "Adrian." She pulled free of Santoro's grip and dropped to her knees in front of him. "Adrian, can you hear me?" He didn't respond. Lena's fingers found his pulse, thready but present. She tilted his head back carefully, checking his pupils with the flashlight on her phone. Responsive, equal. The sedative, like Santoro said, but he needed a hospital, needed proper monitoring. "You've seen him. He's alive." Santoro's voice was bored. "Now make your choice, Lena. Leave Chicago and let him live out his remaining days in peace, or stay and watch me destroy him piece by piece." Lena looked at Adrian's face. Slack with unconsciousness, but still him, still the man who'd seen her when no one else had, who'd given her a life instead of just survival. She thought about the promises they'd made, the love they'd confessed, the future they'd started to build, and she knew what she had to do. "I'll leave." The words tasted like ashes. "I'll take your money and disappear, but I want a guarantee, a real one. You leave Adrian and his people alone. No more attacks, no more moves against him. He gets to keep his territory, his businesses, everything." "That's not how this works." "That's exactly how this works." Lena stood, squaring her shoulders even though she felt like she was breaking apart inside. "You don't want Adrian dead. You want him neutralized. Well, without me, he'll be a shell, broken, just like you wanted. But if you go after him anyway, I'll come back. I'll tell him everything. And then it won't matter what you do to me, because he'll burn your entire world down for revenge." Santoro studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "You really do love him. How tragically romantic." He pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. "There. Transfer initiated. $500,000 in an account under the name Sarah Mitchell, your new identity. Consider it a severance package." "I want it in writing, the guarantee." You want a contract?" Santoro laughed. "This isn't corporate America, sweetheart. You have my word. I won't move against Adrian unless he moves against me first. That's the best you're getting." It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But Lena looked at Adrian's unconscious form and knew she was out of options. If she refused, Santoro would kill them both. At least this way, Adrian would live, even if he hated her for leaving, even if he never understood why. "Fine." She forced the word out. "Let me say goodbye." "You have 2 minutes." Santoro checked his watch. "Then we're putting him back in his car and dropping him somewhere safe. He'll wake up thinking the meeting went sideways and I got away. Cleaner that way." The guards retreated, giving them the illusion of privacy. Lena knelt beside Adrian again, her hands trembling as she touched his face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I'm not strong enough to stay. I'm sorry I'm choosing your life over our happiness. But I love you, Adrian Moretti. I love you more than I thought I could love anyone, and that's why I have to go." She pressed a kiss to his forehead, gentle and lingering, memorizing the feel of him. Then she pulled back, blinking away tears. Something hard pressed against her palm, Adrian's hand, no longer limp behind his back. His fingers curled around something small and metal, pressing it into her hand with deliberate pressure. Lena's breath caught. She glanced down, hiding the movement from the guards, and saw what he'd palmed to her. A handcuff key. Small, ordinary, and exactly what she needed. Adrian's eyes opened to slits, and through her shock, Lena saw they were clear. Alert. He hadn't been unconscious at all, or if he had been, he'd fought through it. His lips barely moved, forming words only she could hear. "Trust me." Then his eyes closed again, his body going slack, the performance perfect. Lena's mind raced. The key meant he'd planned this, or adapted to it, or was about to make a move. She closed her fist around the metal, hiding it in her palm, and stood on shaking legs. "I'm ready," she told Santoro. "Excellent." He gestured to the stairs. "Let's get you out of Chicago, shall we? New life, new name, new everything. You'll thank me eventually." The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Santoro's guard, the one by the door, dropped with a hole in his forehead before his brain could process what was happening. The basement door burst open and Dante came through like an avenging angel, gun raised, 2 more men behind him. Everything happened at once. Santoro dove for cover behind Adrian's chair, his remaining guards opening fire. Lena dropped to the ground, covering her head as bullets tore through the air above her. She heard Dante shouting orders, heard return fire, heard someone scream. Through the chaos, Adrian moved. The zip ties around his wrists fell away. He'd already worked them loose, had been waiting for his moment. He surged to his feet despite the sedative in his system, grabbed Santoro by the throat, and slammed him against the concrete wall hard enough to crack plaster. "You touched her." Adrian's voice was ice and murder. "You threatened her. You made her think she had to choose between me and my life." "Adrian, wait." Santoro's words choked off as Adrian's grip tightened. "I'm going to kill you for that. Slowly. But first, you're going to understand something." Adrian leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the gunfire. She's not my weakness. She's my reason, and anyone who threatens my reason doesn't get mercy. The gunfire stopped. Lena lifted her head cautiously and saw Dante standing over the bodies of Santoro's guards, his gun still raised, his face spattered with blood that wasn't his. The basement was a massacre, 3 dead, 1 dying, and Santoro pinned against the wall by a man who looked every inch the monster he claimed not to be. Lena, Adrian's voice was rough. Are you hurt? No. She got to her feet on shaking legs. How did you were unconscious. I was faking. Adrian's eyes never left Santoro's face. The sedative was real, but I've built up a tolerance over the years, enough that I could fight through it long enough to text Dante our location before they took my phone. You used me as bait. The realization hit like a freight train. You let him take me, threaten me, make me think I had to make it convincing. Now Adrian did look at her, and the regret in his eyes was genuine. If Santoro suspected I was awake, he would have killed us both. I needed him to think he'd won, that you were cooperating. I needed Dante to have time to get into position. You could have told me, Lena's voice cracked. You could have warned me, given me some sign, and risk you giving it away? Santoro's smart, Piccola. He would have seen it in your eyes, heard it in your voice. Adrian's grip on Santoro loosened slightly, and the older man sucked in a gasping breath. I'm sorry I put you through that, but it was the only way. Lena wanted to scream at him, to rage about trust and communication, and treating her like a partner instead of a pawn. But looking at the bodies around them, at the blood and the violence and the brutal reality of Adrian's world, she understood. This was what it meant to love a crime boss. To be protected, yes, but also to be used as a weapon when necessary. What now? She asked quietly. Now? Adrian's smile was cold. Now Mr. Santoro explains who put him up to this. Because taking me on alone, that's not his style. Someone convinced him it was worth the risk. No one? I acted alone. Santoro's words cut off in a choke as Adrian's hand tightened again. Lie to me again, and I'll let Dante get creative with his questions. Trust me, you don't want that. Adrian pulled Santoro away from the wall, then slammed him back against it. Who's backing you? Who told you about Lena? Who gave you the idea that she was the way to break me? Santoro's eyes darted between Adrian and Dante, calculating odds, looking for a way out. He found none. The Russians, Volkov. He's moving into Chicago, wants the territory carved up between us, offered me the east side and half the lakefront if I could eliminate you. Volkov. Adrian's jaw tightened. That tracks. He's been sniffing around for months. He looked at Dante. Get Marco on the phone. Tell him we need to move on the Russian pipeline before they can establish a foothold. Marco's still in the hospital. Then get him out. I don't care if we have to wheel him to the meeting in his hospital bed. This is bigger than Rivera, bigger than Santoro. If Volkov thinks he can move into Chicago, we need to show him why that's a fatal mistake. Dante nodded and stepped away, phone already to his ear. Adrian turned his attention back to Santoro, his expression contemplative. You made a choice tonight, Vincent. You chose money over honor, ambition over survival, and now you're going to pay for it. Adrian, please, I was just trying to survive. Volkov made threats, said he'd burn down everything I built if I didn't, and you believed him. Adrian's voice was almost pitying. You've been in this business for 20 years, and you still don't understand the most basic rule. You never, ever let them see you're afraid. Fear is blood in the water, and sharks like Volkov can smell it from miles away. What are you going to do? Santoro's voice was shaking now, all his polish and confidence stripped away. Adrian looked at Lena, and she saw the question in his eyes, asking permission, asking if she could handle what came next. She thought about the man who'd held a gun to her happiness, who'd made her believe she had to choose between love and survival. She thought about the threats, the manipulation, the way he'd used her love for Adrian as a weapon. Do what you have to do, she said quietly. Adrian nodded, then looked back at Santoro. You're going to call Volkov. You're going to tell him the plan worked, that I'm broken and vulnerable. You're going to set up a meeting between us, neutral ground, just like tonight. And then, when he shows up expecting easy prey, He's going to find out why the Moretti family has run Chicago for 3 generations. He'll kill me when he finds out I betrayed him. He'll kill you anyway. Adrian's voice was flat. The moment you're no longer useful, Volkov will put a bullet in your head and take your territory. At least this way, you buy yourself a few more days. Maybe even survive if you play your cards right. And if I refuse? Adrian's smile was terrifying. Then I'll kill you now and deal with Volkov myself. But I'd rather use you as bait. Seems fitting, given what you tried to do to Lena. Santoro looked between Adrian and Lena, searching for mercy and finding none. Finally, his shoulders sagged. Fine. I'll make the call. But if this goes wrong, if Volkov figures it out, he won't. Adrian released him, letting Santoro stumble away from the wall. Because you're going to sell it. You're going to make him believe he's won, that Chicago is his for the taking, and when he walks into our trap, you're going to be right beside him. You want me to die with him. I want you to prove you're more useful alive than dead. Adrian's expression hardened. Make the call. Now. Santoro pulled out his phone with shaking hands. The call was brief, tense. Santoro playing his role well, reporting Adrian's capture and subsequent escape. The successful deployment of the girlfriend gambit, even if Adrian got away. Volkov's voice came through tinny and harsh, speaking rapid Russian before switching to accented English. You're sure Moretti is compromised? I saw it in his eyes. The girl leaving broke something in him. Santoro was a better actor than Lena had given him credit for. He's vulnerable. Now's the time to move. Then we move tomorrow. Midnight, the docks. I want to see his face when I take everything from him. Volkov's laugh was cruel. And Santoro, don't disappoint me. I don't tolerate failure. The line went dead. Santoro looked at Adrian, something like respect in his eyes now. He'll bring an army, 20 guys, maybe more. You're walking into a massacre. Let him bring 100. Adrian's voice was cold, certain. I'm done playing defense. Tomorrow night, Chicago finds out what happens when you threaten a Moretti. They left Santoro zip-tied in the basement with one of Dante's men standing guard, insurance that he wouldn't try to run or warn Volkov. Then Dante drove them back to the penthouse in tense silence, Adrian's hand never leaving Lena's. She sat in the back seat, processing everything, trying to reconcile the man who'd held her while she cried with the one who'd just orchestrated a brutal counterattack. Both were real. Both were Adrian, and she was going to have to learn to love all of him, not just the gentle parts. You're angry, Adrian said once they were alone in the penthouse. I'm processing. Lena poured herself a drink, expensive whiskey that burned going down but helped steady her nerves. You used me as bait without warning. Let me think I had to choose between you and your life. Made me believe I was going to lose you. I know. Adrian didn't make excuses, didn't try to justify. It was calculated, strategic, and probably the cruelest thing I could have done to someone I love. But it worked. Santoro believed you were cooperating, let his guard down, gave Dante time to move. If I'd warned you, I know. Lena cut him off. I understand the logic. I even agree it was probably necessary. But Adrian, if we're going to do this, if I'm going to be part of your world, you have to trust me. Not just with the easy parts, but with the dangerous ones too. You could have been killed. I could be killed crossing the street. She set down her glass and crossed to him. I chose this life. I chose you. Stop trying to protect me from the reality of what that means. Adrian pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I can't lose you. The thought of you hurt, of Santoro putting his hands on you. It made me want to burn the world down. Then burn it with me, not for me. Lena pulled back to look him in the eye. I'm not some damsel who needs rescuing. I'm your partner. Start treating me like one. Something in Adrian's expression shifted, surprise giving way to respect, then to something that looked like wonder. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm still learning how to be with someone I care about more than power or territory. We'll figure it out together. She kissed him, gentle and sweet. But tomorrow, this thing with Volkov, I want in. I want to help. Absolutely not. Adrian, you're a nurse, Lena, not a soldier. What happens tomorrow is going to be violent and bloody and probably traumatic. I won't let you. You don't get to let me do anything. Her voice was firm. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you I'm going to be there. You need medical support? I can do that. You need someone watching from a car with a phone ready to call 911. If things go sideways, I can do that too. But I'm not sitting in this penthouse waiting to find out if you survived. Adrian studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but you stay in the car with Carlos, armed guard, engine running, ready to leave the second I give the signal. Non-negotiable. Deal. Lena felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. Now tell me the plan. All of it. No more surprises. They spent the next hour going over strategy, positions, timing, contingencies. Dante would lead a team from the north while Adrian approached from the water. Marco, against doctor's orders, would coordinate from a surveillance van with communications equipment. And Lena would be stationed 3 blocks away with Carlos and Tommy, ready to provide emergency medical care or extraction if needed. It was military in its precision, terrifying in its implications. 24 hours from now, people would die. Maybe Adrian would be one of them. Stop spiraling, Adrian said, reading her face. I've been doing this my whole life. I know how to survive. Knowing how and actually doing it are different things. Lena's voice was shaking. What if Volkov brings more men than you expect? What if Santoro warns him? What if... Then I adapt. Adrian pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her. I've survived worse odds, Piccola. I'll survive this too. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her temple, her cheek, her lips. I'll come back to you, always. They made love that night with a desperation born of uncertainty, touching and tasting and memorizing each other in case tomorrow took everything away. Lena fell asleep in Adrian's arms and dreamed of violence and blood and losing the only person who'd ever made her feel whole. She woke to an empty bed and the sound of voices in the living room. Dawn was just breaking, painting the city in shades of gray and gold. Lena pulled on clothes and found Adrian, Dante, Marco, heavily bandaged but upright, and half a dozen other men she didn't recognize, all gathered around a table covered in maps and weapons. Positions here and here, overlapping fields of fire, Dante was saying. If Volkov tries to flank, we'll see him coming. What about the north approach? Marco tapped the map with one finger. That warehouse gives him cover almost to the meeting point, which is why Tommy's team will be on the roof with rifles. Adrian's voice was calm, controlled. Anyone tries to come through that warehouse, they're target practice. Lena watched from the doorway, seeing Adrian in his element, commanding, confident, every inch the leader his father had been. This was who he really was, stripped of gentleness and restraint, a predator planning a hunt. He looked up and saw her, and the transformation was immediate. The cold calculation melted into warmth, the crime boss becoming the man who loved her. Morning. He crossed to her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Sleep okay? Not really. Lena looked past him at the assembled men, the weapons, the maps marked with X's and circles. This is really happening. It has to. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. Volkov won't stop unless we make him, and I won't live in a world where someone thinks they can threaten you and walk away. Then let's finish this. Lena squared her shoulders. Tell me what you need me to do. The hours before midnight stretched like pulled taffy, endless and tense and suffocating. Lena spent the day watching Adrian and his men prepare for war, memorizing the planes of his face in case she never saw them again. He moved through the penthouse with quiet intensity, checking weapons, coordinating with Dante, speaking in low tones with Marco about contingencies and backup plans. Around 4 in the afternoon, Marco pulled Lena aside while Adrian was in his office making calls. You know what you're asking for tonight, girl? The old man's eyes were sharp despite the pain medication dulling their edges. Being part of this world for real, not just playing house in a penthouse? I know. Lena met his gaze steadily. I know people might die. I know Adrian might. Her voice caught. I know the risks. It's not the risks I'm worried about. It's what comes after. Marco shifted in his chair, wincing. You watch the man you love kill someone, even for a good reason. It changes you, changes how you see him. Can't unhear the sound of it, can't unsee the look in his eyes when he does it. You're trying to scare me into staying behind. I'm trying to prepare you for what's coming. Marco's voice was kind but firm. Adrian's killed before. Will kill again tonight, probably. And he'll do it without hesitation because that's what this life demands. You need to decide now if you can live with that. Because once you see it, you can't go back to the version of him that exists in your head. Lena thought about the Adrian she knew, gentle hands patching her up, quiet words in the darkness, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. Then she thought about the man who'd slammed Santoro against a wall with murder in his eyes, who planned ambushes with military precision, who spoke about killing like it was just another item on a to-do list. I love all of him, she said finally, not just the parts that are easy or comfortable. If I'm going to be with Adrian, I have to accept who he really is, what he really does. And I'd rather see it and understand than hide from it and pretend. Marco studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Good. He's going to need that strength tonight and after. After? Lena's stomach clenched. What happens after? After, the landscape changes. Volkov dead or driven out means other players will start circling, testing boundaries. Adrian's going to have to be harder, colder, more ruthless than he's ever been. Marco's expression was grave. And you're going to have to be strong enough to keep him from losing himself in it. The weight of that responsibility settled over Lena's shoulders. Not just standing beside Adrian, but anchoring him, reminding him of who he was beneath the violence and power. I can do that, she said, hoping it was true. I know you can. Marco reached out and squeezed her hand with surprising strength. That's why I'm glad he found you. Boys like Adrian, they need something to fight for that's bigger than territory or money. They need a reason to stay human. Adrian appeared in the doorway then, his expression softening when he saw them. Marco, you should rest. Save your strength for tonight. I'll rest when I'm dead. But Marco levered himself up with a groan. I'm going to check communications equipment with Dante. Make sure nothing gets lost in translation when the bullets start flying. He left, and Adrian crossed to Lena, pulling her close. She pressed her face against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart and trying not to think about how easily a bullet could stop it. You're thinking too loud again, Adrian murmured into her hair. Can't help it. My brain won't shut off. Lena pulled back to look at him. What if this goes wrong? What if Volkov is smarter than you think, or Santoro sells you out, or then I adapt and survive? Same way I always have. Adrian's hands framed her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. But it won't go wrong, Piccola. I've been planning for this my whole life, for the moment when someone big enough and dumb enough tries to take what's mine. I hate that you sound excited about it. Not excited. Determined. His expression turned serious. Volkov coming to Chicago, it's not just about territory or money. It's about respect. About proving that the Moretti family isn't weak, that we can't be pushed. If I let him walk in here and start carving up my city, I'm telling every two-bit gangster from here to New York that Chicago's open season. So this is about ego. This is about survival. Adrian's voice was firm. My father taught me that the moment you show weakness, you're done. Rivals smell blood and come circling. The only way to keep power is to make damn sure everyone knows the cost of taking it. Lena understood the logic. Had spent enough time in his world to see how it worked. Understanding didn't make it easier to accept that tonight people would die to send a message. Promise me something, she said quietly. Anything. Promise me you won't take unnecessary risks, that you won't try to be a hero or prove a point. Just do what needs to be done and come home. I promise. Adrian kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. No heroics, just cold, efficient violence, and then back to you. That's a really messed up thing to find romantic. Welcome to my world. His smile was crooked, almost apologetic. It only gets weirder from here. They spent the rest of the afternoon in quiet togetherness, Adrian going over last-minute details while Lena organized medical supplies in the duffel bag Carlos had given her. Bandages, antiseptic, suture kits, tourniquets, everything she'd need to patch someone up if they made it out bleeding but alive. As the sun set and darkness crept over Chicago, the men started arriving. Dante first, then Tommy and Carlos, then others whose names Lena didn't know. They moved through the penthouse with quiet efficiency, checking weapons, strapping on body armor, speaking in low tones about positions and timing. At 11:30, Adrian came to find her in the bedroom where she'd been trying not to have a panic attack. It's time. He was dressed all in black, tactical pants, dark shirt, body armor that made him look like something out of an action movie. But his eyes were soft when they landed on her. You ready? No. Lena forced herself to stand, to grab the medical bag, to act like she was capable of handling this. But I'm coming anyway. The drive to the docks took 20 minutes through empty streets. Lena sat in the back of the SUV with Carlos at the wheel and Tommy riding shotgun, literally a rifle propped against the passenger door. Nobody spoke. The silence was heavy with anticipation and fear, and the grim certainty of violence to come. They parked 3 blocks from the meeting point, tucked behind an abandoned warehouse with clear sight lines to the exits. Carlos killed the engine but left the keys in the ignition, ready for a quick escape. You stay in this car no matter what, he said, turning to look at Lena. You hear gunfire, you see people running, whatever, you stay put unless I specifically tell you to move. Understand? I understand. Lena's mouth was dry. What about medical, if someone needs help? If they need help bad enough, we'll bring them to you. But you don't go out there, not for anything. Carlos's expression was kind, but immovable. Boss would kill me himself if I let something happen to you. Tommy checked his watch. 5 minutes to contact. Dante's team should be in position. Lena pulled out her phone, staring at the last text from Adrian. I love you. See you soon. 3 words that could be a promise or a goodbye, and she had no way of knowing which. The minutes crawled by. Then, at exactly midnight, the sound of car engines echoed through the empty docks. Lena watched through the windshield as black sedans pulled up to the meeting point, 5 of them, disgorging men in dark clothes with visible weapons. That's Volkov's convoy, Tommy murmured. Right on time. More cars appeared from the opposite direction, Adrian's people moving into position. Lena could see Adrian himself walking toward the center of the space, flanked by Dante on one side and another man she didn't recognize on the other. He moved with absolute confidence, like he owned the docks and everyone in them. A man emerged from the center sedan, tall, broad-shouldered, with pale hair that caught the dock lights. Volkov. He walked forward with the same confidence Adrian projected, and when they met in the middle, Lena could see them talking even though she couldn't hear the words. Come on, boss, Carlos muttered. Make him show his hand. Whatever Adrian said made Volkov laugh, a harsh, unpleasant sound that carried across the water. Then Volkov gestured, and his men started fanning out, moving to flank Adrian's position. They're trying to box him in, Tommy said, tension in his voice. Dante, move your people. He was speaking into a radio, coordinating movements Lena couldn't see, but she could feel the shift in the air, the way violence hung there waiting to break. Adrian's voice suddenly boomed across the docks, amplified somehow. You came to Chicago thinking it would be easy, Volkov, thinking one scared middle manager could deliver me on a platter. But here's what you don't understand about this city. We eat predators like you for breakfast. Volkov's laughter cut off. Big words from a dead man. Funny. I was going to say the same thing. Adrian's hand moved in a signal Lena couldn't interpret. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions at once. Dante's team from the north, another group from the east, and Tommy's snipers from elevated positions. Volkov's men scattered, returning fire, and the docks became a war zone of muzzle flashes and screaming and the sharp crack of bullets hitting metal. Lena pressed her hands over her ears trying to block out the sound, but it was everywhere. Inside the car, inside her head, inside her chest where her heart hammered against her ribs. Stay down! Carlos had his gun out, eyes scanning for threats. Don't look, just stay. But Lena was looking, couldn't stop looking, watching as Adrian moved through the chaos like he'd been born to it. He fired with precise efficiency, dropped 2 of Volkov's men before they could even raise their weapons, then dove behind a shipping container as return fire chewed up the ground where he'd been standing. She saw Dante take a hit to the leg and keep moving, saw one of Adrian's men go down and not get up, saw blood and violence and death playing out like some terrible movie, except this was real, and the man she loved was in the middle of it. Contact left, Tommy's voice was sharp. 3 of Volkov's men were moving toward their position, using abandoned cargo as cover. Carlos threw the car in reverse, tires squealing as he backed them deeper into the shadows. One of Volkov's men raised his gun toward their windshield. Lena saw it happening in slow motion, the weapon rising, the man's finger on the trigger, her death approaching at the speed of a bullet. Then Tommy's rifle barked once, and the man dropped, a red flower blooming on his chest. "We need to move!" Carlos was already driving, taking them around the corner of a warehouse, getting them away from the firefight. "Too hot, we're too exposed." "What about Adrian?" Lena's voice was shrill with panic. "We can't just leave him. He's got this." "Trust the plan." But Carlos's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors for pursuit. They circled around to a new position, further back but with a clear view of the main fighting. Lena watched through binoculars Tommy handed her, her hands shaking so badly she could barely focus. Adrian was still standing, still fighting, moving with Dante in synchronized violence that spoke of years fighting side by side. They'd pushed Volkov's men back toward their vehicles, cutting off escape routes, turning the ambush into a slaughter. Then Lena saw Volkov himself, emerging from behind his sedan with a rifle raised. He was aiming at Adrian's back, lining up a shot while Adrian was focused on threats in front of him. "No!" Lena didn't realize she was screaming until Carlos grabbed her arm. "What? What do you see?" "Volkov, he's got a shot on Adrian. Someone needs to—" Tommy was already on the radio, but it was too far away, too many people between the snipers and their target. Volkov's finger tightened on the trigger. A figure stepped into the line of fire. Marco, limping and bandaged and probably on enough painkillers to down an elephant, threw himself between Volkov and Adrian. The rifle barked once, twice, and Marco went down. Adrian spun, saw Marco falling, saw Volkov with the smoking gun. His face transformed into something inhuman, pure rage and grief and murder. He moved faster than Lena had ever seen anyone move, closing the distance between him and Volkov in seconds. Volkov tried to bring the rifle around, but Adrian was already there, knocking it aside, his hands finding Volkov's throat. "You killed him!" Adrian's voice carried across the sudden silence as the gunfire died down. "You killed my family!" Volkov struggled, clawing at Adrian's hands, his face turning purple. Adrian didn't let go, didn't even seem to hear Volkov's desperate attempts to speak. He just squeezed, his face a mask of cold fury, until Volkov's struggles weakened and then stopped entirely. When Adrian finally released him, Volkov crumpled to the ground. Dead or unconscious, Lena couldn't tell from this distance. Adrian dropped to his knees beside Marco, cradling the old man's head. Even from here, Lena could see the blood. Too much blood, spreading across the dock in a dark pool. "Marco," Adrian's voice broke. "Marco, stay with me." "Go." Carlos's voice was rough. "Take the medical bag. He needs you." Lena didn't argue, just grabbed the duffel and ran. She sprinted across open ground toward where Adrian knelt, her nurse training overriding her fear. When she reached them, she dropped beside Marco and assessed with hands that were suddenly steady. 2 gunshot wounds, one to the shoulder, one to the abdomen. The shoulder was survivable. The abdomen was killing him. "Marco, can you hear me?" Lena pressed gauze to the abdominal wound, trying to slow the bleeding. "Stay with me. You're going to be okay." "Liar." Marco's smile was weak but real. "Always were a terrible liar, girl." "Don't talk. Save your strength." But Lena's hands were shaking as she worked, knowing she was losing him, unable to stop it. "Adrian." Marco's hand found Adrian's, gripping with surprising strength. "You listen to me, boy. What I did, that was my choice. You don't carry that guilt. Understand? You shouldn't have. I could have handled Volkov." Adrian's voice was wrecked, tears streaming down his face. "You would have, but then you'd be dead and this girl would be alone, and everything your father built would fall apart." Marco coughed, blood flecking his lips. "I'm old. Lived a good life. You got decades ahead of you. Make them count." "Marco, please." Adrian's hands were covered in blood, pressing down on wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding. "Take care of her." Marco's eyes found Lena's. "And you, girl, keep him human. Don't let this world turn him into a monster. Promise me." "I promise." Lena's voice cracked. "I promise, Marco." "Good girl." Marco's breathing was getting shallower, his grip on Adrian's hand weakening. Adrian, love you, boy. Always loved you like you were mine. I love you too. Adrian bent over him, pressing his forehead to Marco's. Thank you for everything, for saving me, teaching me, keeping me alive long enough to find her. Marco smiled one last time, then his eyes closed and his breathing stopped. Adrian let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a roar, holding Marco's body and shaking with grief. Lena wrapped her arms around him from behind, her own tears mixing with his, holding him together while he fell apart. Dante approached slowly, his face grim. Boss, we need to move. Cops will be here soon and we need to clean this up. Give me a minute. Adrian's voice was raw. Just give me a goddamn minute. They stayed there on the blood-soaked dock, the three of them, Adrian holding Marco's body, Lena holding Adrian, and Dante standing guard over them all. Around them, Adrian's men were moving efficiently, dealing with bodies, collecting shell casings, erasing evidence. Finally, Adrian stood, lifting Marco's body with a gentleness that broke Lena's heart. We take him home. He doesn't get left here like trash. Already got a car waiting, Dante said quietly. He'll be taken care of, Adrian. I promise. They put Marco in one of the SUVs, and Lena watched Adrian stroke the old man's hair back one last time before closing the door. His face was empty now, shock setting in, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. Come on. Lena took his hand, laced her bloody fingers through his bloody fingers. Let's go home. The drive back was silent, except for the sound of Adrian's ragged breathing. Carlos drove carefully, avoiding main roads, and Tommy made calls coordinating cleanup. By the time they reached the penthouse, dawn was breaking over Chicago, painting the city in shades of gold and red that looked too much like blood. Dante helped Adrian inside while Lena carried the medical supplies. The penthouse felt different now, haunted by loss, by the violence that had followed them home. I need to... Adrian gestured vaguely toward the bedroom. I need to get this blood off. Go. I'll make coffee. Lena watched him disappear down the hallway, his shoulders bowed under the weight of grief. Dante sank onto the couch with a wince, his leg wound bleeding through the field dressing. Let me look at that, Lena said, pulling out her supplies. It's fine, just a graze. It's not fine. You're bleeding all over Adrian's expensive furniture. She cut away his pants leg efficiently, cleaning and dressing the wound with practiced hands. This needs stitches, real ones, in a hospital. Can't risk the questions, just wrap it tight. I've had worse. Lena did as he asked, then sat back on her heels. Marco saved his life. I know. Adrian's going to blame himself. I know that too. Dante's expression was tired. But that's grief talking. Marco made his choice, same way all of us make choices in this life. He saw Adrian in danger and acted. That's what family does. Is Volkov dead? Yeah, Adrian made sure of it. Dante's voice was flat. Santoro, too, found him in his car with 2 bullets in the head. Volkov must have decided he was a liability once he realized it was a trap. So it's over. Lena felt numb saying it. Volkov's dead, his men scattered, Chicago's safe. For now, there'll be others eventually. Always are. Dante stood with a grunt. But for today, yeah, it's over. He left, and Lena was alone with the coffee pot and the morning light and the sound of the shower running in the other room. She found Adrian 15 minutes later, sitting under the spray fully clothed, staring at nothing. Hey! She stripped off her own bloody clothes and stepped into the shower with him, not caring that the water was ice cold. Come back to me. I got him killed. Adrian's voice was hollow. Marco's dead because of me. Marco's dead because he loved you enough to take a bullet. Lena pulled Adrian's face toward hers, making him meet her eyes. He made a choice, Adrian. The same choice you would have made for him. That's not your fault. I should have seen Volkov. Should have been faster, better prepared. You can't predict everything. You can't control every variable. She kissed him, tasting blood and water and grief. You're human, Adrian. You're allowed to not be perfect. He broke then, really broke, sobbing against her shoulder while the cold water beat down on them both. Lena held him through it, whispering reassurances she wasn't sure she believed, promising futures she hoped they'd get to see. When the water finally ran warm and Adrian's tears dried up, They got out and dried off in silence. Lena found clean clothes for both of them, then pulled Adrian to the bed. "Sleep," she ordered. "Just a few hours. The world can wait. I need to arrange Marco's funeral. Need to meet with the families, make sure everyone knows Dante's handling it. He told me before he left." Lena pushed Adrian down onto the mattress. "You've got 3 hours to grieve in private before you have to put on the boss face again. Use them." Adrian pulled her down beside him, wrapping around her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. "I love you. I love you too." Lena pressed a kiss to his temple. "Now sleep." He did, finally, and Lena lay awake watching him breathe and trying to process everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. She'd watched people die, had held Marco while he bled out, had seen the man she loved kill without hesitation, and somehow she was still here, still choosing this life, this man, this violent and beautiful and terrible world. When Adrian woke 3 hours later, his eyes were clearer, steadier. He found Lena in the kitchen making breakfast, eggs and toast, comfort food that probably wouldn't comfort but was worth trying. "Dante called," she said. "Funeral's set for Friday. St. Anthony's, then burial at Rose Hill. He's coordinating with the families, making sure everyone who needs to be there knows." "Okay." Adrian's voice was rough with sleep and grief. "Okay, that's good." They ate in silence, and Lena watched him slowly rebuild the walls that grief had torn down. Watched him become the Adrian Moretti Chicago knew, cold, controlled, untouchable. By the time Dante arrived an hour later with updates and decisions that needed making, Adrian was fully armored again. But that night, alone in the darkness, he let the armor drop, let Lena hold him while he grieved. And in the weeks that followed, as they buried Marco and dealt with the fallout from Volkov's death and rebuilt Adrian's organization, Lena learned what it meant to love someone in this world. It meant holding them through nightmares, meant being strong when they couldn't be, meant accepting that the man she loved was both gentle and violent, caring and ruthless, capable of great tenderness and terrible brutality. 3 months after Marco's death, Adrian called a meeting of Chicago's major families. Lena watched from the back of the room as he stood before men twice his age and laid out new terms. "We're done with the old ways," Adrian said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Done with unnecessary violence, with exploitation, with treating our communities like resources to be mined. We protect. We provide. We make sure our people have what they need to survive. And anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally." No one challenged him. Not after what he'd done to Volkov. Not after the ruthless efficiency with which he'd eliminated every one of the Russians' local allies in the days following the dogfight. But Lena also saw the other changes. The community center Adrian funded in Marco's name, the scholarship program for foster kids, the jobs program that gave people alternatives to crime. He was using his power differently now, building something that would last beyond violence and fear. "You're changing things," Lena said one night as they stood on the penthouse balcony looking out over their city. "I'm trying." Adrian pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "Marco once told me that power without purpose is just tyranny. I'm figuring out my purpose." "And what's that?" "Making sure no one else has to grow up the way I did, scared and alone, with violence as the only language they understand." His arms tightened around her. "Building something better. For us. For the people who come after." 6 months after that, Lena started her new position as Director of Trauma Services at Chicago Memorial. She'd interviewed for it on her own merit, but Adrian's substantial donation to the hospital's expansion fund probably hadn't hurt. She worked normal hours now, had a staff of her own, made decisions that saved lives instead of just patching people up to be broken again. "How does it feel?" Adrian asked on her first day, adjusting her new ID badge with a smile. "Terrifying. Amazing. Like maybe I'm actually making a difference." Lena kissed him, quick and sweet. "Thank you for believing I could do this." "You did this, Piccola, not me. I just made sure the playing field was level." They fell into a rhythm. Lena running her trauma program, Adrian managing his empire with Marco's wisdom guiding him even in death. They fought sometimes, usually about Adrian taking unnecessary risks or Lena working too many hours. But they always came back to each other, always chose each other, always found their way back to this thing they'd built together. A year after that first night in the ER, Adrian took Lena back to the hospital where they'd met. It was late, the ER quiet for once, and he walked her to the exact spot where their eyes had first locked. I walked through those doors bleeding and angry and convinced I'd never feel anything real, he said quietly. And then you looked at me, and everything changed. You're being sentimental. But Lena was smiling, her heart full. I'm being honest. Adrian dropped to one knee, pulling a ring box from his pocket. Lena Carter, you saved my life that night. Not by stitching me up, but by seeing me. Really seeing me. And I want to spend the rest of my life being seen by you, seeing you, building something real together. Will you marry me? Lena looked down at this dangerous, complicated, beautiful man who'd walked into her invisible life and made her matter. Thought about everything they'd survived together, violence and grief and loss and fear. Thought about everything they'd built, community, purpose, a love that was messy and real and absolutely worth fighting for. Yes. She pulled him to his feet, kissing him hard. Yes, I'll marry you, Adrian Moretti. I'll marry you and love you and keep you human, even when this world tries to turn you into a monster. That's all I've ever wanted. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple band with a single perfect diamond. You, me, and a life that's more than just survival. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony at St. Anthony's, the same church where they'd buried Marco. Dante stood as best man, and one of Lena's former co-workers from the hospital served as maid of honor. It wasn't perfect. Someone's cousin got drunk and started a fight, and 2 of Adrian's associates got arrested for outstanding warrants on their way to the reception. But it was theirs. Real, messy, complicated, perfect in its imperfection. 2 years after that, Lena stood on the balcony of their penthouse, their home now, filled with photographs and memories and a life they'd built together. Watching the sun set over Chicago, she rested one hand on her barely there baby bump, feeling the flutter of life growing inside her. Adrian came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his hand covering hers on her stomach. You're thinking loud again, he murmured. I'm thinking about how far we've come. How much has changed. Lena leaned back against him. How impossible this would have seemed that night in the ER. Nothing's impossible, Piccola. You taught me that. Adrian pressed a kiss to her temple. You taught me that broken things can be fixed, that love isn't weakness, that there's strength in choosing to be vulnerable. You taught me some things too. Lena turned in his arms to face him. That being invisible isn't the same as being safe, that sometimes the dangerous choice is the right one, that love is worth fighting for, even when it's terrifying. We did okay, didn't we? Adrian's smile was soft, his eyes warm. For 2 broken people who didn't know what they were doing. But we did better than okay. Lena kissed him as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and red, beautiful instead of bloody this time. We built something real, something that matters, something worth keeping. Below them, Chicago hummed with life. Their city, their home, their empire built not on fear but on protection and community and the radical idea that people deserved better than just survival. Adrian's legitimate businesses were thriving. The community programs Marco had inspired were expanding, and Lena's trauma center had the lowest mortality rate in the state. They'd taken their broken pieces and built something whole, taken their violence and turned it toward protection, taken their loneliness and created family. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be more challenges, more threats, more nights where Adrian came home bleeding and Lena stitched him back together. There would be arguments and fear and moments where they wondered if they'd made the right choice. But they would face it together. 2 people who'd been invisible finding each other in the chaos. 2 souls who'd survived by being alone, learning to thrive by standing together. As darkness fell over Chicago and lights began to sparkle across the city like stars, Lena rested her head against Adrian's chest and listened to his heartbeat, steady, strong, alive. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she'd finally come home. Not to a place, but to a person. To this dangerous, complicated, beautiful man who'd seen her when no one else had, who'd given her not just survival, but a life worth living. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Adrian whispered back. Always. And in the city below, in the world they'd fought to build, life went on. Messy and complicated and absolutely perfectly real.